Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3994, where we bring you conversations that matter most to Northwest Missouri. Today's episode is all about something that directly impacts every single person in our community: public safety and emergency response. We're joined today by representatives from the Andrew County Sheriff's Office, the Savannah Police Department, the Rosendale Fire Department, and the Helena Cosby Fire Department. This is about the proposed tax issue, 1% sales tax that would fund a centralized 911 dispatch system for law enforcement, fire, EMS services across our county. Our goal today is simple: to help you understand what's being proposed, why it matters, and what it could mean for our community, so you can make a decision on April 7th. Before we get into that conversation, I want to quickly thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible: Greater Than Financial, Gina's Cafe, E.L. Crawford Construction, North Central Missouri College, Scooters Coffee, Pancakes, Pups, and Suds, and this episode's community partner is Hair by Morgan. All right, let's get into it. For everybody listening, guys, thank you so much for being with us today. It's hard to know where to begin. We know this is on the ballot. What can you tell us about why this means so much to our community?
The reason it means so much is we're going to try to keep dispatch local so that we don't have to contract out, so there's not delays in response time. The volunteer fire department, ambulance district, and all the law enforcement, we try our best to get there as quick as we can, but we can only get there as quick as we get the information. And if we have to outsource, there may be a delay in the information, which would cause us to be delayed.
So how big of an issue is this, let's say, for Rosendale?
It's a big issue. We need when we get the call, we need to know where we're going right away. We don't need no time lapse or anything like that.
What about from a financial perspective? I know many people have talked about like what this would mean if you had to take over your own, emergency response system.
Yes, we run on a pretty small budget, so that would affect us a great deal if we had to go out somewhere else.
And what would it look like if we had outsourced this? What would it look like if we had to use camera or an outside service?
When someone would call, the call would go to that outside agency, then they would have to either call us by phone or dispatch by radio, which would be a time delay. And each entity would have to pay for that service themselves. So like the Sheriff's Office of County would pay so much for ours, the Savannah Police Department would pay so much. And not knowing what the cost would be, how they would set it up, would be the biggest, because right now, the one proposal that was out there was by the percentage that the radio or the call log was used. But, if we outsource it somewhere else, then they could decide at any time what they want to charge, raise it, up past the contract date or anything like that.
I guess the next question is, first of all, have any of you ever been on the same side of an issue before? I'm so interested in this. Like, do you all come together all the time and everybody agrees and everybody's on the same page? Or is it not a big deal that you guys are?
For me, I'm fairly new police chief down here. The other counties and agencies I've worked for in the past, you didn't have this camaraderie that we have down here. And when this was brought to us back in April of last year, we pretty much right away all came together and decided to work to resolving the issue as opposed to just letting it go to the wayside and keep things the way they were and possibly having delays. So to me, it was amazing the way we all came together down here. I've never seen anything like it.
That is great to hear, but also, what does that mean for the taxpayer? When we see something like this, you're all getting along, you're all on the same side. I mean, I guess I will say as a taxpayer, it means, man, if they all think the same, they're all saying what we need, maybe, darn it, this is what we need. But how does that translate to our pocketbook? This is a 1% sales tax. What are your thoughts on that?
Not having dispatch local it affects all of us, taxpayers, officers, ambulances, anyone that has a job in emergency service in this county. And if it doesn't stay local, it's going to cost the taxpayers in the long run, whether it's through the tax now or down the road. It's going to hurt us all in some way, shape, or form, whether it's to their points of the delay and response, guys not calling out where they're at. We were just discussing that out in the lobby there. It's going to affect all of us, and we've got to get this thing, we've got to get it passed.
We were talking about what this means if we don't have a centralized area, a centralized unit per se. What does that look like for response times, and what are the issues there? What happens when somebody calls in to County Road? They're calling from County Road 370, whoever. What does that look like for response?
There would be a delay because just the extra time it would take for them to dispatch back to us. And a big thing would be like communications between all of us. Right now, we all can communicate fairly easily on the same radio channel or pretty close. But if we all go to outside different places, then we may not be on the same radio channel as the Savannah PD. So if they have an officer in trouble, it'll be extra time delay before we know that they need help. Same way with our guys out in the county. If fire departments need help back and forth with each other, it'd be an extra delay on getting that started and dispatched out.
And then talk to me about the number of dispatchers. I've heard that kind of is a concern. Does this tax give us more dispatchers?
Yes, right now we have 7 full-time dispatchers. We would really love to have 2 on per shift. Every other agency in our 911 district has 2 on per shift. We're the only one that does not, but yet we are the busiest of all those agencies. We average somewhere between 13 and 14,000 either calls for service or officer activity throughout a year. And right now we only have 1 dispatcher on most of the time, and they're trying to handle several 911 calls at once, dispatch everybody out at the same time. And it's just really hard to do. And with 2 of them there, they could concentrate and split the duties and get everything done a lot faster.
And let me ask you about the tax that's eliminated by this sales tax. $1 per device per month fee that we're currently paying. Can somebody explain that to me?
Right now it's like per device, for every cell device that hooks to the internet or cell phone network, there's $1 per device tax that goes to our 911 board for our 911 equipment and things. If this tax passes, then we cannot collect that no more. So we would have to, that would go away. And then we would have to, the county would have to pay for, or the 911 central dispatch would have to pay that to our 911 board to keep us in that 911 district.
So to all of you, this makes perfect sense. But to the taxpayer, what does a sales tax look like?
Sales tax, so if you go and you buy like a $2 candy bar at the gas station, you're going to be paying 2 more cents. It seems like a lot, but when you actually break it down, it's really not that much for the services that we're going to be providing. One thing about the response time is there's nothing that says that if we have to split up that we're going to be going to the same agency. Let's say if I have to leave, there's nothing that says I'm going to go to Cameron and Andrew County is going to go to Lynn County, for example. We may be going to different counties, which will cause a delay and it'll cause problems with radio traffic. Like Charlie said, if one of my guys are in trouble screaming for help, they're not going to hear it. They're going to have to wait for the response from the county that we dispatch through. So that's going to be a big problem. So when you look at the actual amount that we're asking for, it's not that it seems like a lot, but for the services that we're going to be providing to the community, it's for the greater good.
What does this mean for a small area like your department?
Just to touch on that, it is a 1 cent sales tax, but it's on sales tax. So anyone passing through our county that purchases that, Pepsi at a gas station, buys a pizza, what have you, they help pay for that as well. And myself, along with the rest of these guys, we handle calls of service for people that don't live in this county anyway. So it it helps that the other people coming through will help pay for that. It affects our smaller departments just as much as it does these big guys, and rightfully probably more, just because we have such tighter, smaller budgets than some of these guys do. And the amounts that we were looking to have to pay to stay in the county, some may say it's not a lot, but in the end of the day, it is. It adds up in our budget, whether it's paying fuel for our trucks to run up and down the roads, or paying for trainings or protective gear for our firefighters. That money's got to go somewhere. If we're paying for taxes, paying the county to stay here, it takes it out of our budget for stuff we may need.
And the estimated cost, have you even looked at it for 911 services if you were to go solo on your own as a department?
Outside of the county, yes. And those numbers were cheaper than the first numbers we had gotten to stay here. No, I will say this, I'm going to elaborate on that. Not one entity, when we've been at this since a year now in April, not one entity in this county wants to leave. Nobody wants to leave. And I stand on that. I think everyone, any of the officers would say that, of any of the entities. No one wants to leave the county. This is the best result that we can come up with to all stay together, to keep the interoperability between our radio systems. You guys have touched on that, but I'll add one more thing to that. A lot of people may not know this, but every agency has spent a lot of their own money in the last several years to get the highest end radios we can get, so we can all talk together, so we can communicate better. And we would definitely hate to lose that.
Looking at our fact sheet that we want to try to get in the hands of every voter before April 7th, there's a difference here with the amount of money we're estimating can come in. And the difference is about $350,000. And you guys are saying that this is money that can be saved towards moving expenses, building. We just talked about fire gear. How does something like that get distributed? Any idea how that would happen?
As far as the difference on the money, so the way it'd go is it'd be a standalone entity if this tax passed. So there wouldn't be any distribution of funds. It would all be the 911 dispatch fund. That money would sit there in a bank account until we had enough to build a standalone building, and then get everything moved over and everything shifted over to the new building. So there would be no distribution of funds. It would all go into one fund for dispatch. Savannah PD wouldn't get any money from it. Andrew County Sheriff's Office would receive no money. It would just be strictly for the 911 fund.
Makes sense and needed. So where would the office be located until that building was created?
Sheriff Gillette has offered to let them stay and use the current center we have there at the jail until they're up and going and can get their own building and everything.
If you guys could say something to the taxpayer today, April 7th is coming, right? We got to make a decision. Are we going to click, check yes or check no? Fill in the bubble, whatever we end up doing. What would you say to a taxpayer today?
We really need to keep this all here, so we all stay together on this. We can all communicate and serve them the way they deserve to be served.
Any passion behind this issue in the last year? What have your thoughts been going through this?
Oh, just up and down. It's been kind of a little bit of a ride, but we hope they'll see what we're seeing and do what they got to do.
We need to keep everything local, have our own people working our own area. Like our dispatchers, when people call in, they actually know people on the other end of the phone that's calling them. So it helps calm that situation down. And also keep it local. A future sheriff down the road, after Sheriff Gillette, goes out of office, or even the county commission at any time can decide they do not want to fund dispatch. And that's it. Then everybody would have to outsource at that time. And we as a county would have no control over it. It would be in someone else's control. We need to keep it under our control and have our people working it and running it.
So tell us, Charlie, about just a recent call and just being a dispatcher yourself. You know how this works. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, what happened was we only had one dispatcher on. They were busy on another 911 call. Our system is designed with our 911 district. If it don't get answered in 4 rings, it rolls over to another entity. Problem was when the caller was a local, and when they told the other entity, hey, I'm at this local restaurant, the other entity insisted they had to have an address, because they're not from around here. Where we do it, they would have said the name of this restaurant, all of us here know where that's at. All of our dispatchers know where it's at. So it would have been a lot quicker. There was a several minute delay before the ambulance actually got contacted, or we got contacted to dispatch out the ambulance. It was more than 5 minutes delay on this call. And being a dispatcher yourself, I also started in 2002 as a dispatcher for Sheriff Howard. You're one person in there trying to do all this at one time, and it is very overwhelming for one person. Say there's a wreck on the interstate, everybody with cell phones calling 911. Well, you can only answer one at a time, and I personally had calls where there's been over 50 911 calls for one incident, and then you're trying to get the highway patrol, the fire departments, the ambulance, the deputies, and anybody else that needs called all at the same time. It's extremely overwhelming for a dispatcher to try to do it by themselves.
My last question for you guys is, are other communities our size, other counties, 17, 18,000 people, do they have a centralized system? How common, uncommon is that?
So Nottoway County, which is our neighboring county, has Maryville. They have a central dispatch center. The Cameron has a central dispatch center, which they all dispatch for multiple agencies, and like Nottoway County dispatches for Worth County as well. Cameron dispatches for their county. I think we were one of the only one right now that is not ran off of a board. All those other entities are ran off of a 911 board, and the sheriff's office has been holding the weight and the budget on all of this for years, and we're the only one that is operating this way, and it's just time to get up to date with everybody else.
Guys, I really appreciate your time today. Sincerely, we appreciate what you do for our community, and we just hope to get the vote out. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, to everyone listening, this is exactly what the 3994 is about, giving you the information you need to stay informed and engaged right here in Northwest Missouri. So don't forget, the election is April 7th. Make sure you take the time to learn more and get out and vote. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors just one more time: Greater Than Financial, Gina's Cafe, E.L. Crawford Construction, NCMC, Scooters Coffee, and Pancakes, Pups, and Suds. This episode's community partner is Hair by Morgan. We appreciate all of our sponsors and the time and effort it takes for them to invest in a product like this. Until next time.